This happened a few months ago. I'm Jamie, 32, and I've been a nurse for over a decade. I usually work day shifts, but I needed the extra money, so I agreed to take on night shifts. The hospital is old, built in the late 1960s. It smelled like antiseptics, and the lights flickered. I walked the empty corridors, hearing nothing but my footsteps. I didn't think much of it at first. I was just trying to get through the night like any other shift. But I've never stopped thinking about it. Around 1 a.m., I went to check on a patient in room 204. The dim light flickered above me. The air felt heavy. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The patient was asleep, so I quietly filled out my notes. That's when I heard a faint whisper. It was so soft that I thought I imagined it. I looked around the room, but everything seemed normal. My heart was racing. I shook my head and continued with my work. A little later, I went to the supply room to grab more bandages. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I pushed open the door, and the room felt colder. The shelves were lined with boxes. I turned to grab what I needed when I heard someone say my name. Jamie. It was a quiet voice, barely a whisper. I froze. There was no one else around. I glanced back at the doorway, half expecting to see a fellow nurse. But the hallway was empty. I felt uneasy as a chill ran down my spine. I hurried to collect what I needed and left the room. I returned to the nurse's station and grabbed a cup of coffee. I sat down, trying to shake off the weird feeling in my gut. A few minutes later, the intercom crackled to life. Nurse on call, please respond. My stomach dropped. The voice wasn't from the usual PA system. This one sounded distorted, almost garbled. I pressed the button to respond. I'm here. No one replied. I felt my hands shake. Around 3 a.m., I had to check on another patient in room 103. I walked down the dim corridor, the flickering lights creating shadows. I didn't hear any sounds, just the echo of my footsteps. When I reached 103, I pushed the door open, but it was locked. That's odd, I thought. I knocked lightly, but no one answered. I checked the chart on the clipboard. The patient was supposed to be in there. Suddenly, I heard a soft crying sound coming from down the hallway. It was low, almost like a child. I followed the sound, my footsteps quickening. I turned the corner, and the crying stopped. I felt confused but continued looking. There was no one there. Just darkness stretching ahead. Then I turned the corner and saw something that shouldn't have been there. A figure stood at the end of the hallway, shrouded in shadows. I squinted, my heart pounding. I couldn't breathe as it turned to face me. Its eyes were hollow. That's when I realized there was no way anyone could be standing there. I stumbled back, my heart racing out of control. The lights flickered again, and then everything went dark. I felt my heart thumping in my chest as the darkness enveloped me. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It was different this time. The silence felt heavier, pressing against my eardrums. I stood frozen, waiting for the light to come back, hoping it was just a power outage. Then, a faint glow appeared at the end of the hallway, illuminating the figure. I squinted through the shadows again, desperate to make sense of what I saw. It was still there, head tilted slightly, as if studying me. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. Panic surged. I turned and sprinted toward the nurse's station, my heart pounding in sync with my hurried footsteps. When I burst into the station, I nearly knocked over my colleague, Sarah. What's wrong? She asked, wide-eyed. I could barely catch my breath. There's someone or something down the hall. I pointed a trembling finger toward the dark corridor. Jamie, you're just tired. Night shifts can mess with your head, Sarah said, trying to reassure me. But I could see the hint of doubt in her eyes. I swear, I saw it. The figure, the voice. I'm not imagining this. Just then, the fluorescent lights flickered back on, buzzing to life above us. I took a deep breath, but the relief was short-lived. The intercom crackled again. This time, it sounded clearer, but the message chilled me to the bone. Help me. I can't breathe. The voice was familiar. I recognized it. It was soft and distant, like a child was calling, but this time it was intertwined with a sense of urgency. My breath hitched in my throat. I glanced at Sarah, and her face paled. I thought you said no one was supposed to be there, she said, panic creeping into her voice. I don't know. I need to check on room 103 again, I stammered. No. Jamie, you can't go back there. It's locked for a reason. She pleaded, but my feet were already moving. I had to confront whatever was happening. I walked back down the corridor, the light flickering again as I approached room 103. My body felt heavy, as if moving through molasses. The air was thick with something unexplainable. As I reached the door, I knocked. Is anyone in there? Please, let me know. Silence. But then I heard it again, the soft crying. It was unmistakably coming from inside the room. I gripped the doorknob, twisting it, but it wouldn't budge. A knot formed in my stomach. Desperation surged through me. Hang on. I yelled, pressing my ear against the cool surface of the door. I'm coming. Just as I did, the crying stopped. An uneasy stillness took its place. And then came a sound behind me, a soft thud, like footsteps. I whirled around, scanning the corridor. It was empty. That's when I saw it. At the far end of the hallway, the shadow moved, alive and twisting. My heart stopped. This wasn't just a trick of the light. Something was definitely there, and it was coming closer. I froze in place, my breath caught in my throat as the figure at the end of the hallway drew nearer. It wasn't just a shadow, it had shape and form, slipping in and out of the light. My instincts told me to run, but my legs felt like granite. Jamie. Sarah's voice sliced through the heaviness, but I barely registered it. All I could do was watch, heart pounding, as the figure reached the first flickering overhead light, illuminating its outline. It was a tall, slender form, with elongated limbs that seemed to stretch impossibly. Please, let me go. A whisper floated through the air, cold and desperate. It slapped me across the face, but I was too paralyzed to react. The words echoed in my mind, help me. I can't breathe. Jamie. Sarah shouted again, panic clawing at her voice. I finally turned and bolted back to the nurse's station, each step fueled by sheer terror. I couldn't tell if I was running toward safety or away from something much worse. What happened? Sarah grabbed my arm as I stumbled back in, my eyes darting around. It was there. My voice shook. I saw it. Someone is in trouble. We have to call security. Okay, focus. Let me check the system, she said, her fingers flying over the keyboard. I clutched the desk, trying to steady my breathing. I could still hear that voice echoing in my head, mixing with the sound of my heartbeat. Room 103 is still locked, she said, frowning at the screen. No one should be there. It's been empty since the blackout. What if I hesitated, the thought clawing at me? What if it's not empty? What if someone needs help? Jamie, please. That room has been off limits since the incident, Sarah insisted, her eyes wide with anxiety. I knew in my gut that something was wrong, but the thought of finding out what was in there terrified me. I can't just ignore it. There's a little boy in there. He is scared. I heard him. Before Sarah could respond, the intercom crackled again. Help me. The voice echoed again, insistently, as if it were right behind me now. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Panic crested in my chest, and without thinking, I burst through the door to the corridor once more. "Jamie!" Sarah called after me, but I was determined to see this through. I reached room 103 again, heart racing. The door seemed to breathe in the darkness. I banged on it, desperation clawing my throat. "I'm coming in." Silence loomed once more, thick and palpable. I pressed my ear against the wood again, but this time, I didn't hear crying. Instead, there was laughter, childish and haunting. That was when I felt it. A cold breeze threaded through the hallway, brushing past me, and I turned just in time to see the figure move closer, dark and undeniable. I stumbled back, the shock paralyzing me for a brief second, but I couldn't back away. I had to know. The door creaked open slightly, an invitation or a warning. I took a shaky breath. What was waiting for me inside? I stepped through the threshold, feeling the air turn icy. Then everything went dark. When the darkness swallowed me whole, I felt an overwhelming weight settling on my chest. It was as if the air thickened and pulled me down. My senses went into overdrive, trying to grasp my surroundings. I reached out, fingers brushing against cool, hard walls. "Hello." My voice was barely a whisper. I strained to hear any reply, but the silence enveloped me. The chill wrapped around me tighter. I took a tentative step forward, the rubber soles of my shoes squeaking against the floor. I felt blind, vulnerable. I wanted to turn back, but curiosity held me in place. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was waiting for me. Suddenly, a flicker of light returned, illuminating the room in a pale glow. I found myself inside room 103. The walls were bare, and the air felt staler than before. In the corner stood a small hospital bed, the sheets rumpled as though it had been recently disturbed. "Jamie." The voice echoed again, louder, and this time, there was a hint of urgency. I spun around, searching for the source, but it felt like it was coming from everywhere at once. I crept closer to the bed, my heart racing. "Who is there?" I asked, my voice trembling. Then, without warning, something shifted in the shadows. I squinted into the darkness and caught a glimpse of movement. Someone darted past me, quick and fleeting. My gut sank. I wasn't alone. "Please, help me." The whisper soaked into my skin. It was that same voice, but it was different, filled with fear and desperation. I wiped sweat from my brow. "Where are you?" I called out, more confident now. I needed to find this kid. "I'm here to help." A glimmer of hope sparked in my chest, urging me to press forward. I took another step toward the corner of the room, and when I saw it, a small figure curled up beneath a window. "Hey!" I exclaimed, rushing over. "Are you okay?" But as I approached, the child unfurled slowly. A face stared back at me, gaunt and pale. It wasn't a little boy at all, it was a reflection of something unworldly. The eyes were wide and dark, like deep wells sucking in all light. I stumbled back, shock gripping my insides. "No. You have to help him." The figure cried out, its voice a twisted echo. "He's trapped." "What?" My breath caught as I looked for the boy I thought I'd find. "Where? Who are you?" "His name is Jonathan. He needs air. Please, save him." Panic surged. I rushed to the window, throwing it open, gasping as cold air rushed in. Frantic, I turned back to the figure. "Where is he?" I shouted, feeling the room spin. "Time is running out." As I struggled to comprehend what was happening, the lights flickered again. A low hum swelled around me, and then it all went dark once more. In that instant, I was drawn back as if pulled by invisible strings. The darkness consumed me again, and I felt a dizzying tug, like I was being pulled into a whirlpool. Just as suddenly, the lights flickered back on. But this time, something was different. The room felt colder, the air thick and choking. I glanced around, my heart pounding. The bed was still there, but now it looked more disheveled, as if someone had thrashed around in it. The pale light cast eerie shadows that danced along the floor. I could see the figure again, but it wasn't he alone. "Jonathan," I breathed, trying to steady myself. I squinted into the corner where the figure had been, but it had vanished. In its place stood a small shape. It looked like a child but shimmered faintly, as if made of glass. "Time is running out." The child's voice echoed again, sharp and clear. "You have to hurry." "Where is he?" I shouted, feeling the walls close in. My mind raced back to the window I had opened. I rushed over, expecting fresh air to fill the room, but the chill intensified, as if the window itself had opened to a void. "Look!" The shimmering figure pointed towards a dark spot on the floor. I dropped to my knees and stared. It seemed like a shadow but thicker, more tangible, pulsing faintly. "Jonathan, I'm here." I called, but no answer came. I was running out of time. I leaned closer, feeling that shadow reach toward me like fingers clawing at my skin. Suddenly, I felt a rush of wind sweep through the room. It enveloped me, pulling my hair back and sending a shiver down my spine. There stood the child, transparent and flickering like an old TV. "You have to break the barrier," it cried. "Only you can save him." "What do you mean? How?" I yelled into the chaos, but the answer eluded me. A sensation of dread washed over me, and the child flickered again, its features twisting painfully. "Find the key," it shouted just before the lights went out again. I felt the panic rise, thick and heavy. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the darkness to recede. When I opened them, I was outside room 103. The hallway was dim, filled with shadows that seemed alive. "Where's the key?" I whispered to myself, scanning the walls. Just beyond the shadows, I spotted flickering lights coming from a nearby room. Driven by an urge I couldn't explain, I sprinted toward it, ignoring the whispers creeping along the walls. As I drew closer, the lights went out entirely, plunging the corridor into silence. My breath came fast, and darkness surrounded me, but then I heard a soft, muffled cry. "Help me!" I froze. I felt a knot tightening in my gut. "Jonathan?" I called hesitantly, but the cry was replaced by a desperate silence. I knew I had to move. Something was wrong, and I was the only one who could fix it. But the question lingered, what if I was too late? I stood in the thick darkness, frozen at the sound of that cry. I had to act, but fear held me in place. Jonathan's voice felt like a thread tying me to something real, cutting through the overwhelming silence. "Jonathan!" I yelled again, my voice shaky. No response came. The shadows around me felt heavier, pressing in, and the air grew colder. Each breath became a fight as panic threatened to spiral out of control. Then, I caught movement in the corner of my eye. I turned, heart racing, but it was just a flicker, a brief flash of something darting down the hallway. I took a step forward, half hoping it was Jonathan, half terrified of whatever it might be. "Please, just show me where you are," I pleaded, desperation tainting my voice. I forced myself to move deeper into the darkness, my hands brushing against the rough, cold walls for guidance. That muffled cry echoed again, pulling me forward. The hallway felt endless, and every flicker of light from the rooms I passed was unsettling. They were each an invitation to fear. What lay behind those doors? What if I wasn't alone? As I approached the next door, I hesitated. My pulse throbbed loudly in my ears, drowning out everything around me. I leaned closer, pressing my ear against the door. I could hear faint whispers, a chaotic mix of voices and muffled cries. Then suddenly, they stopped. "Hello?" I called softly. Silence. It struck me then, I needed to find Jonathan, but how far was I willing to go? What if I didn't like what I found? Taking a deep breath, I turned the doorknob and pushed the door open. The room was empty, but not in the way I expected. It was dark, like the others, but an oppressive feeling lingered in the air. My eyes scanned the space for a clue, anything that might point me toward Jonathan. That's when I saw it. In the far corner, almost swallowed by the shadows, was a small box on the floor. It looked old, covered in dust and cobwebs. My breath quickened again. What if it contained the key? I approached cautiously, my heart racing with the hope and dread of the unknown. Kneeling down, I reached for the box. The moment my fingertips grazed its surface, a jolt surged through me. The world around me flickered, colors bending and twisting before settling again. Suddenly, I heard another voice, sharp and urgent. Don't touch that. It can't be opened. I recoiled and spun around. A figure loomed just outside the door, a man, thin and ragged, his eyes wide and frantic. You have to leave. He shouted, but before I could respond, he vanished into thin air, leaving only the echo of his warning. Chilled, I turned back to the box. The choice before me was clear: leave it alone and risk losing Jonathan forever, or open it and face whatever I might unleash. In that moment of uncertainty, the corridor darkened again, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Someone was coming. I could hear footsteps now, echoing off the walls in a steady rhythm. My instincts screamed at me to hide, but I was rooted to the spot, caught between the box that promised answers and the clamor of approaching danger. As the footsteps drew closer, I felt a chill that sank deep into my bones. I turned to the door, panic clawing at my insides. That shadowy figure had vanished, but was it really gone? Or had it simply slipped back into the darkness? I could barely breathe as I strained to listen. The footsteps stopped just outside the room. My heart pounded wildly in my chest. I needed to make a choice. With uncertain hands, I wiped the dust from the box and hesitated, gazing at it like it held the secrets of the universe. It felt wrong, but what if it was my only chance to find Jonathan? The footsteps resumed, growing louder as they shifted closer. I had moments left, maybe seconds, before I would be discovered. I had to act. My choice made, I glanced one last time at the door. I could either face whatever was coming or open the box and unveil the unknown. Steeling myself, I lifted the lid, wincing as the rusted hinges creaked. The air inside seemed to hum, like electricity laced with energy and danger. Inside lay a small, ornate key, glinting darkly in the minimal light. It radiated a sense of power and dread, as if it held the weight of the night I had stumbled into. I picked it up, feeling its cold surface against my palm. Then the door burst open. A figure surged into the room, silhouetted against the flickering light from the corridor. I caught a glimpse of a woman with wild eyes, her tangled hair framing a face twisted in fear. "You can't!" she yelled, rushing toward me. "You don't understand what you're doing." I felt my grip tighten around the key. I backed away, looking between her and the box. "Where's Jonathan? What is this?" Her frantic energy was contagious, pulling me into a whirlwind of confusion. "It's not just a key. It's a gate. You can't open it. It will only draw him in." The shadows shifted behind her, an ominous presence gathering. My mind raced. "Draw who in?" "That box, this place," she continued, voice trembling. "It's more than just doors and walls. It's a trap. You're not safe." Before I could protest or ask further questions, the energy in the room shifted once again, and I felt an unexplainable pull from the key in my hand. It was as if something deep within was awakening. "Get rid of it!" The woman screamed, but it was too late. I could sense the air closing in on us, and the weight of her words pressed down on me. Suddenly, a rush of cold air swept through the room, and I realized, I was not alone anymore. Something was lurking just out of sight, hungry and dark. I turned to face the door again, adrenaline flooding my veins. But the figure in the doorway changed, morphing into something twisted and indistinct. I stumbled back, the key clattering to the floor as I gasped. In that moment of shock, I knew one thing for sure: I was about to learn the true meaning of fear, and the darkness was waiting to claim me. I stumbled backward, my heart racing. The shadow in the doorway shifted, elongating, twisting, becoming more than just a figure. I was paralyzed, caught in the grip of something dreadful. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. The woman, who seemed just as terrified, stepped forward, eyes darting between the shadow and me. "We have to go. Now," she urged, her voice sharp and panicked. It snapped me back to reality. I needed to escape. But where? The doorway blocked the only exit, and the room felt smaller with every breath I took. I glanced back at the box, the key glinting in its depths like a beacon of hope and despair. "What is your name?" I blurted out, trying to gain some semblance of control. "Ella," she yelled, taking another step toward me. "Forget the key. We have to leave before it's too late." At that moment, the shadow lunged forward. I flinched, feeling a rush of cold air wash over me like icy water. I saw what lay behind its eyes, dark and hungry, fixated on me. Terror filled my lungs, and I turned, grabbing Ella and pulling her toward the far wall. The room was a maze of memories and fear. Every noise, every breath felt like it carried the weight of our predicament. "What is it?" I gasped, my voice shaky. "What does it want?" "I don't know." Ella panted, searching for another way out. "But it thrives on fear. It feeds on us." As if to prove her right, the shadow twisted and morphed again, whispers crawling into my ears. I shook my head to clear my thoughts, feeling the suffocating grip of dread. "We can't stay here," I barked. "We need a plan." Then I remembered the key. My fingers traced its contours as I relayed the brief moment from before. It came from that box. Maybe opening it somehow affects the entity. Ella's eyes went wide. "No, we can't," she exclaimed. "That will only make it worse." The shadow flickered, a low growl echoing in the air. It was growing impatient. I felt it reach for me, cold fingers creeping over my skin. "We won't survive if we don't do something." Before I could change my mind, I rushed back toward the box. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. Ella grabbed my arm, trying to pull me back, but I shoved her away. "Stay back." With trembling hands, I grasped the key. As I did, the box began to vibrate, pulsing with a deep energy that sent shockwaves through the air. The room shifted around us, walls bending and warping as if reality were tearing apart at the seams. "This can't be good," Ella shouted. The shadow lunged again, this time breaking through the threshold of the door. It was more than a figure now, it was a living nightmare. I could see its maw, wide and ready to swallow us whole. I took a deep breath, determination flooding my veins. I couldn't let fear control me. "On three," I said, turning to Ella. 1, 2, 3. In unison, we lunged for the box. A surge of light erupted as the key turned in the lock. Everything went dark as the world around us collapsed. I felt the pull of the entity trying to reclaim its hold. The last thing I heard before the light swallowed us whole was the echo of Ella's scream. Then, silence. I blinked, the darkness slowly giving way to a dim, flickering light overhead. I was lying on a cold floor, the scent of antiseptic sharp in my nostrils. Groaning, I pushed myself up, rubbing my head. Where was Ella? Panic surged through me. "Ella!" I shouted, my voice hoarse and trembling. "Here!" A voice whimpered, just a few feet away. I turned to find her sitting against the wall, her eyes wide with fear. Relief flooded through me, but it quickly evaporated when I noticed the look on her face. "We're not safe yet," she whispered, glancing around nervously. The room was larger now, almost an empty hall. Fluorescent lights buzzed ominously above us. I took in my surroundings. The walls were stark white, and the floor was tiled, sterile. But it felt wrong, like a fever dream. What happened? I asked, still dazed. Ella looked at me as if she could read my mind. I think we traveled, she stammered. This isn't the same place. It's different. I stood cautiously, my legs shaky. Every part of me felt raw and exposed. Different how? Before she could answer, a low, guttural sound echoed through the hall. It made my skin crawl. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The shadow wasn't just gone, it was lurking somewhere, waiting for us. Ella visibly trembled. We need to find a way out. Right, I agreed, though I doubted we would just walk out of here. I started towards the nearest door, but it felt glued shut. This cannot be happening, I muttered. I pressed my shoulder into it, but it didn't budge. What if it knows we're here? Ella said, backing away from the door. Her eyes darted towards a dimly lit corridor at the end of the hall. We should check down there. Are you sure? I hesitated. The darkness seemed to stretch and breathe. Yes. There must be something or someone, she urged. Just, trust me. I took a breath and nodded, not fully convinced but knowing we had little choice. We moved down the corridor, the flickering lights barely enough to illuminate our path. I felt like we were being watched, my instincts screaming that we shouldn't be here. The sound grew louder, swirling around us like a storm. It was nothing but whispers, incoherent but filled with malice. The walls felt too close, closing in on us. Then everything changed. I spotted something glimmering on the floor ahead. I stepped closer, and my heart sank. A key, the very same key I had held in the room before everything went dark. It shimmered ominously in the light, almost pulsing with a life of its own. That's it. I gasped, reaching for it. But an icy chill pinned me in place. The whispers escalated into a scream, sending shockwaves of fear through me. No. Don't touch it. Ella shouted, but it was too late. My fingers closed around the key. A piercing screech erupted around us, and the darkness roared back to life. Shadows twisted, swirling like a cyclone, closing in on us with a vengeance. I couldn't breathe. The whispers surged louder, drowning out my thoughts. But then, in that chaos, I noticed something there. At the edge of the shadows, faintly outlined, stood a figure. I couldn't make out its features, but I felt its eyes boring into me. Just like that, I knew we had awakened something far worse than what we had faced before. Run! I yelled, clutching the key tightly, feeling its rough edges bite into my palm. We stumbled backwards, the shadows chasing us down the corridor, and as I glanced back at the figure, it took another step forward. That's when I realized I wasn't just holding a key, I was holding our fate. When I opened my eyes, I found myself sprawled on the ground in a sterile hallway, the familiar scent of antiseptic burning my nostrils. I blinked in confusion as fluorescent lights hummed overhead, bathing everything in a sickly glow. I was alone, but for a moment, all I felt was overwhelming relief. I was out of that darkness. Ella! I called, even though I wasn't sure where else she could be. My heart raced as the echo of my voice faded into silence. I picked myself up off the floor, still clutching the key. The cold metal felt heavy in my palm, an ominous reminder of the terror we had faced. I stumbled toward the nearest door, pushing against it, but it wouldn't yield. Panic crept back in as I pounded on the thick metal. Ella! I screamed again, desperation clawing at my throat. Then I heard a faint rustling in the shadows beyond, followed by a soft whimper. Jamie? Is that you? Ella! My heart soared. I rushed toward the sound, pushing my weight against an adjoining door. It swung open, revealing a dark room, flickering with dim light. She was there, huddled in the corner, eyes wide with fear. Relief flooded through me as I rushed to her side. "You're okay. What happened?" she breathed, scanning the corners of the room nervously. "Do you have the key?" "I do," I said, holding it up between us. "But we have to leave. Now." Ella's gaze was fixed on the key, and I could feel her fear radiating. "Maybe we shouldn't have taken it," she whispered. A low growl surged from the shadows, freezing my blood. It was back. The oppressive aura we had once felt lay thick in the air. The entity still lingered, hungry and waiting. "We can't stay here," I urged, and without waiting for a response, I pulled her with me toward the nearest exit. My heart raced, every instinct told me to flee, but that ominous presence pressed close. Doors lined the hallways, each one glinting ominously in the flickering light. "We need to find a way out, but if we can't get that door open," I trailed off, feeling a sinking dread settle in my stomach. "Maybe using the key again," Ella began, but I shook my head. "No. We don't know what it will do," I stammered, the memory of that shadow stretching across the room harrowing me. "What if it takes us to somewhere worse?" As we turned another corner, the air grew cold, the lights flickering erratically. I felt it, the weight of eyes on us as the whispers crescendoed. "Jamie, we have to do something," Ella cried, her voice rising with urgency. Just then, I caught a glimpse of movement, a figure darting down the hallway ahead. My body screamed to chase after it, instinctively knowing it might lead us to freedom or help. "Come on," I urged, pulling Ella in that direction. As we approached, the distant figure stopped at the end of the corridor and turned slightly. I could see now a child. My heart dropped. Was this Jonathan? Panic surged through me again. "I can't breathe," the little voice called, echoing eerily against the walls. "Jonathan!" I shouted, ignoring the lingering shadows that threatened to engulf us. "We're coming." We gained speed, but he remained just out of reach. Then, from behind, a presence stirred. The shadow loomed closer, whispering, faint and terrible. "You can't escape." I turned, instinctively shielding Ella as the dark entity rushed towards us. The air seemed to crackle. "Just keep running," I yelled, pulling Ella away from the grasping shadows. I'd never known fear like that moment, heart racing as I sprinted ahead. The child's cries pulled me forward, weaving through a twisted maze of hospital corridors, until I could hardly tell where we were or if this would even lead us to him. Then, a flicker of light revealed an open door. "In here!" I shouted and dashed inside, slamming the door behind us. The small room was cluttered, filled with medical supplies and old charts, but something felt wrong. The essence of fear lingered. "This isn't right," I panted, glancing around. "Why are we here?" Maybe someone used to be trapped here," Ella whispered, looking around the room. "We should look for a way out." I nodded, but my instincts urged caution. As we began to search, a sound resonated outside, the unmistakable whispering of dozens of voices, weaving tales of despair. "Jamie, look," Ella pointed toward the wall, where the light flickered again. In that light, a figure materialized, a gaunt form, pale and shadowy. "Help him. Please." It cried out, but the voice distorted into a chilling echo again. "Get back!" I shouted, pushing Ella away as I felt a wave of cold sweep through me. The shadows pressed against the door, trying to seep in. "We have to leave. Now." I pulled her toward the doorway, and as we pushed through, I felt the cold hands of the entity grasping at us. By some miracle, we burst back into the hallway. But the child's cries still echoed, pulling at my heartstrings. "Jonathan!" I yelled, hoping somehow he was close. "No, Jamie!" Ella pleaded, her arms trembling with fear. "We don't know what's happening. We can't keep chasing shadows, but I couldn't stop. This was my chance to help him. I turned, sprinting back toward the child's cries, but the shadows here grew thicker, swirling with malicious delight. Help him! My mind screamed, my heart pounding as I plunged deeper into the darkness, dragging Ella with me. We stumbled through a back door, coming into a room that vibrated with a deep, resonant hum. The space shimmered, distorting as if we had crossed into another realm, an ill-lit space filled with remnants of the past. There. Across the threshold, Jonathan stood, a faint glow enveloping him. "I need air," he gasped, his breath collapsing beneath a weight I couldn't see. "I'm here," I pleaded, darting toward him, but the wall of shadows surrounded us, casting thick tendrils like clawed hands desperate to pull me away. "Jamie!" Ella's voice cut through the haze. "Use the key." Before I fully realized it, I was pulling it from my pocket. "You want me to do what?" "Open the doorway," she shouted, the fear igniting a spark of determination in my gut. I held the key tightly, following her gaze toward the swirling shadows looming menacingly above Jonathan. "I'll do it!" I screamed, plunging the key into an open space, feeling the pressure build, following the vibrations that pulsed through me. The shadows screamed as the key turned. A brilliant light erupted, blinding and electric. "Hold on!" I shouted, grabbing Jonathan's hand as reality twisted around us. The shadows shrieked, unwilling to release their prize, clawing at us desperately as we pulled free from their grasp. I could feel Ella's presence beside me, steady and unyielding. The light surged brilliant, warm, and then all at once, it crashed into darkness. I gasped for air, as we tumbled into the world again, back in the cold hall of the hospital. The lights flickered erratically. Behind us, the shadows dissipated. Just like that, their hold on us shattered, and I felt the weight lift. I turned to Jonathan, watching as he gasped and scrambled to sit up, confusion washing over his childlike features. You helped me?" he whispered, eyes wide with shock. "Yes. You're safe," I said, relief smothering the anxiety that prickled through me. As I looked at Ella, however, a question lingered in the air. Did we truly escape? Or would the shadows return, waiting for their moment? For now, Jonathan was back, and we were alive, but the weight of uncertainty lingered, the kind of uncertainty that keeps you looking over your shoulder. We moved toward the nurse's station together, breathing deeply, still feeling that haunted essence ebb at our heels, wondering who or what might be calling to us in the dark. I guess some questions just don't have answers.